In 1363, the English Parliament literally had to pass a law about shoe length. Not sword length, not spear length, shoe length. Because medieval nobles were walking around with footwear so absurdly long that some extended over 2 feet from their toes, basically wearing canoes on their feet. These weren't just shoes. They were weapons of mass distraction, and they nearly brought down European society. Well, maybe not society, but definitely a lot of dinner parties. Meet the poulaines. The medieval shoe so ridiculous it makes Crocs look reasonable. Picture this. You're a 14th century nobleman getting dressed. Your shoes are so long that putting them on requires an engineering degree. The tips are stuffed with moss, yes, moss, to keep their shape. You need silk ribbons to tie the points to your knees so you don't trip over your own feet walking to breakfast. And when you sit down, your shoes stick out so far they could poke the person across the table. This wasn't just fashion. This was performance art with a side of masochism. The longest documented poulain measured 24 inches beyond the toe. That's 2 feet of pure, impractical shoe. For context, that's longer than a Subway sandwich and somehow less practical for eating. The poulain, literally meaning from Poland, started in 14th century Krakow. But like most fashion trends, it began sensibly and then spiraled completely out of control. Polish nobles initially added just a modest point to their shoes. Think of it as medieval toe contouring. But then it reached the French court. And if there's one thing the French have never been accused of, it's restraint in fashion. What was a subtle 2-inch point in Poland became a 6-inch statement in Paris, then a 12-inch declaration of war against common sense in England. By 1390, shoe tips were so long that chronicles report nobles getting tangled in their own footwear during formal dances. Imagine explaining to your date that you can't waltz because your shoes are having a disagreement with the floor. These shoes weren't cheap. A quality pair of poulains cost more than a peasant's annual income. We're talking about the medieval equivalent of a Lamborghini for your feet. The finest examples were made from Spanish leather, dyed with expensive pigments like cochineal red or lapis lazuli blue, and sometimes decorated with actual gold thread. The shoemakers of London, Paris, and Krakow became medieval millionaires. They developed specialized techniques, reinforcing the points with whalebone, creating internal wire frameworks, and inventing the world's first shoe trees to maintain those ridiculous curves. One inventory from a French nobleman's estate lists 7 pairs of poulains worth more than his horse, his armor, and his castle's wine cellar combined. Priorities, people. Here's where it gets truly insane. Medieval society decided your shoe length determined your social worth. Kings and princes could wear points up to 24 inches long. Earls and barons were limited to 12 inches. Knights got 6 inches. Merchants were capped at 2 inches. Peasants, round toes only. Thank you very much. Parliament actually appointed shoe-length inspectors, yes, that was a real job, to measure footwear and fine violators. Imagine putting professional shoe measurer on your medieval LinkedIn. The punishment for wearing shoes above your station? Fines, public humiliation, and in some cases having your shoes cut off in the town square. Nothing says justice like a public de-shoeing ceremony. Living in poulains was like choosing to walk through life wearing flippers. Chroniclers document countless accidents. Nobles tripping at state dinners, falling downstairs, and getting their shoes caught in carriage wheels. One French duke reportedly missed his own wedding ceremony because his shoes got stuck in the chapel door. Knights had to remove their poulains before mounting horses. Try looking dignified while changing shoes in full armor. Stairs became death traps. Rain turned pointed shoes into medieval slip and slides. Dancing required choreographers to account for 2 feet of shoe per person. The City of London banned poulaines from churches in 1368 after too many parishioners got tangled during communion. Even God apparently had limits. Medieval priests went absolutely ballistic over pointed shoes. They called them Satan's talons and devil's beaks. One bishop proclaimed that wearing poulaines would send your soul straight to hell, specifically because you couldn't kneel properly for prayer with 2-foot shoe extensions. Religious artwork from the period shows demons wearing exaggerated poulaines, while saints sport sensible round-toed footwear. Morality plays featured villains identifiable solely by their ridiculous shoes. The church literally turned footwear into a theological battleground. The church as a whole, through its sermons and moralistic writings, strongly condemned the corruption of pointed shoes that lead men to vanity and women to immodesty. Prominent bishops and friars, like the Franciscan preacher Thomas of Ebchester, were among the most vocal critics, issuing fire and brimstone condemnations of the trend. This was serious business. When your government has to create shoe legislation, maybe your society has lost the plot. But that's exactly what happened across Europe. Edward III of England established the Shoe-Length Ordinance of 1363, creating a sliding scale of acceptable toe length based on social rank. Enforcement was surprisingly serious. Court records show hundreds of fines for excessive shoe-length violation. Some nobles tried to cheat by wearing shoes with detachable points, medieval fashion hacking. Others hired shoe bearers to carry the tips of their shoes while walking. Yes, shoe servants were a real thing. France went even further, creating the Guild of Shoe-Length Assessors, complete with official measuring sticks and certification processes. Wasson, being a medieval bureaucrat, must have been wild. The poulaines' downfall came from the most medieval reason possible. They were terrible in battle. During the Battle of Nicopolis in 1396, French knights were reportedly forced to cut off their shoe tips with swords before they could fight effectively. Nothing kills a fashion trend like military embarrassment. The rise of gunpowder warfare demanded mobility. Pointed shoes and quick retreats don't mix. By 1410, military manuals specifically warned against poulaines in combat. Fashion had to yield to the practicalities of not dying. The final nail in the coffin came from an unexpected source: the plague. During outbreaks, cities banned poulaines because people couldn't run from infected areas quickly enough. Public health trumped public vanity. Before we mock medieval shoe obsessions, consider that we live in an era where people spend $2,000 on sneakers, queue for hours for limited edition Jordans, and create entire identities around shoe brands. We have influencers whose entire career is showing off different shoes. We've replaced silk ribbons with sneaker collecting. 6-inch heels serve the same function poulaines once did. They announce that the wearer doesn't need to run anywhere because they're important enough that things come to them. Designer shoes still cost more than most people's rent. We still judge character by footwear. The only difference? We've gotten better at marketing the impractical as aspirational. The poulain lasted nearly 2 centuries, which is longer than most civilizations. It survived wars, plagues, and papal condemnation. In the end, it took practical necessity to kill what might be history's most successful impractical fashion trend. Museums across Europe still display poulaines, and visitors invariably laugh at their absurdity. But maybe we shouldn't laugh too hard. After all, we're the generation that made platform Crocs a thing. Medieval people had poulaines. We have influencer culture and $300 sneakers that fall apart after 6 months. The more things change, the more they stay exactly ridiculously the same.